This is Jay Carpenter, moderator of the PhoneWord Forum. Today is Wednesday, January the 30th, 2013. It's approximately 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and today we are speaking with Jose de Castro of Voxeo Labs, and we're going to be talking about the API, Application Programming Interface, that was announced on January 7th of this month for AT&T, and we're going to be talking about WebRTC and other topics that might arise. And I welcome the folks that are on the call so far. I know Jose is on the call. Is there anybody else that would like to announce themselves?
Sue.
Hi, Sue. Welcome.
Hi, Jay. Thanks.
I'm sorry, who was that? One more time. I'm sorry, I'm in a noisy environment.
This is Bernie Hühner in Zurich.
Oh. Hi, Bernie. Welcome. Great to have you on the call. And I know Jose's on the call, so.
Hello, everyone.
Is there anyone that would like? Is there anyone that would like to say anything before we get started? Any topics? I'm guessing a few more people will probably hop on. But I think we can go ahead and get started. So, all right, well, hello, welcome.
Hello there. This is Jim from Telesmart.
It's Jim?
Yes.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, hello, welcome.
Hi, Jay. Tom.
Hi, Tom. Welcome to the call.
Muting again is *6.
I believe the muting and unmuting is *6.
Okay.
So I'm looking at my cheat sheet. I'm pretty sure that's the standard. So I'd just like to say a little bit about Voxeo before I turn it over to Jose. I've been a customer of Voxeo for, I think, about 2 years now, and I had, and I do apologize, I'm in kind of a noisy environment, and I'll probably go on mute here shortly. But I think I've been a customer of Voxeo for about 2 years now, maybe a little bit longer, and I met Jose for the first time at a place called Ecom, I think it was 2011 up in San Francisco, which was kind of like the who's who of telephony, new media, etc. And Voxeo was one of the sponsors, but Voxeo is excuse me, impressive to me because they really take a different approach to their business model. I really consider it to be next generation cutting edge in that they're open source, they're cloud-based, and they're really actively involved in what I consider to be sort of the next wave of where telephony multimedia is going, which is WebRTC. So I participate in a call that I would highly recommend to everyone on this call, which is the VOAP User Conference. And I think if you go to vuc.me, you can find out about that call. But that's a once-a-week call, and it's definitely, in my view, some of the most talented, most cutting-edge folks on the globe that are part of that call. And Voxeo is often a participant, an active participant in that call, including Tim Panton from the UK and Jose as well. Jose did a great presentation on a new service that they've ushered in called Amici, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit. But I invited Jose to participate in the PhoneWord Forum because of the announcement on January the 7th, which is an API that they're rolling out for AT&T so that developers can now actually interface with the carrier, create new things, create a whole new realm of services. And I really consider this to be a big turning point from the legacy, let's call it ecosystem and realm of carriers into a whole new realm that's much more open, much more innovative, much more exciting. So I'm going to leave it at that and basically turn it over to Jose. And Jose, if you'll just kind of introduce yourself a little bit, say anything more about Voxeo Labs and Tropo and whatever you would like, and then talk about the AT&T API. I would appreciate it.
Great. Well, thanks, Jay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jose Castro, and I'm the CTO actually here at Voxeo Labs. I'm based in San Francisco, but Voxeo Labs, we're just a small kind of tight-knit group of passionate technologists. We started off as kind of an R&D group within Bucksale, and have just kind of recently spun out to an independent company. So there's about 50 of us right now. We're spread out around the globe, and our goal in life is really to provide operators and carriers around the world with a path to becoming platform providers. Much in the same way that Amazon went from being a retailer to a platform company. We think that there's a clear path for the telco industry to follow suit and become kind of leaders in communications platforms. There's a relationship between a phone user, a subscriber, as we call them in the industry, and the phone company that is tough to replicate, and it's taken many years to create and to kind of cultivate from a telco's perspective. And there are lots of ways that we can leverage those relationships to create tons of value for people in their everyday lives, and not just on the mobility and communication side, but just in other ways as well. We see things like connected devices and M2M, machine-to-machine type communications as being huge growth opportunities for the carrier market, and we're just happy to be a part of it. We're a software company, really, so we effectively have a software-based platform that is layered on top of existing telco infrastructure and exposes that infrastructure using web-friendly APIs. For those of you guys who aren't developers, what an API is basically just it's a way for developers that are building desktop apps or mobile apps or web pages to be able to use someone else's investments to accelerate development of their applications. And that's exactly what we're doing with the telcos and what we just did with AT&T. AT&T has a multi-billion-dollar asset in the form of their network, which is incredibly valuable to anyone wanting to build voice, video, chat, presence into their apps. You don't have to start from scratch. That infrastructure is already there, and we're just kind of helping to make it available to the wider developer base. I'll talk a little bit about some kind of specific use cases here, but maybe this is a good time to just pause and see if anyone has any questions. No? Okay, excellent. Great. So I'll just keep chucking along here then. Great. So in terms of the actual applications that we kind of hope to enable, and specifically around the announcements that we've made with AT&T, are really kind of three categories. One is extending the communications experience and the kind of the mobile communications experience from something that's kind of tied to the handset today. You know, you kind of dial. You know, the calling experience hasn't really changed much in a very long time. You know, kind of look someone up in your address book, click on their name, it rings them, you get some progress events. You know, ring, ring, ring. They answer, then someone hangs up and the call's over. And the interface to that call has largely gone unchanged as well. I mean, you have a 0 through 9 pound and star type interface, and you know, some handsets give you some a few bells and whistles on top of that. So you know, with WebRTC, we can now risk that all those the actual communicating part, the voice and the video and the messaging, and kind of embed that onto any device. And that's entirely radically kind of changes what operators can do and what developers can do on top of the phone network. So you know, we've got some cool demos that we'll be demoing at Mobile World Congress, which is a huge show out in Barcelona, where we can have a call that's anchored in the mobile voice network, and then with the kind of flick of a wrist on a smartphone, kind of just flick the call over to a TV, and maybe upgrade the call to a video call, all without kind of leaving the kind of purview of the network operator. So it's a consistent identity, it's still using the mobile phone number, but it just you can kind of supercharge these calls by moving them around to different devices, each with their own kind of special set of capabilities, right? So, you know, for those of you who haven't really looked into WebRTC, I encourage you to do so. It really is going to change, you know, how people communicate. It's and it really it is kind of the first real coming together of the telco and the web world in a significant way. So, so that's one area that we focus a lot on, is kind of just basically enabling more screens and allowing people to communicate in whatever way is most convenient for them. You know, another area that you know, AT&T is leveraging our platform is around kind of a lot of enterprise and small business use cases where you want to embed communications, you know, voice, video, SMS, as part of an IT process or a sign-up process on your website. So let's say I'm signing up for an online banking session, and I need to verify someone's phone number. You know, something as simple as that. So I want to push a text message with a code so they can enter the code on the website. You know, those things used to be really difficult to do. And just in the last few years, you know, companies like ours, and also kind of, you know, some other companies that have also kind of popped up that offer this as a cloud service have really lowered the bar to building those types of things. So so that's our Tropo product, and that's what AT&T is just basically embedded into their core network. So that their enterprise partners, you know, let's say a Walmart or an IBM, in addition to buying thousands of phone lines from AT&T, can now leverage the AT&T network to automate their business using voice and video and SMS as a complement to kind of mobile apps and web pages. Is that making sense to you, Jay?
So, Jose, this is Jay. I have a question. What would you say is AT&T's interest in, you know, being part of or using the Tropo platform for their services? And what would you say is their strategic direction? That's on the horizon.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. Yeah. So, you know, one thing I kind of failed to mention was, you know, in addition to being a telco enabler, we also, in selling software to phone companies, you know, we also run our own kind of public cloud, which is available on tropo.com. And you know, tropo.com is, you know, in the telco world, they, you know, would call it like an over-the-top service. So it's not tied to a specific telco. We basically buy wholesale minutes from a variety of different carriers. And by offering that as a kind of a very low friction service for developers, we've amassed a huge developer base. So we've got about 150,000 registered developers on our developer program. So when AT&T approached us about being interested to help open up their network to the broader developer base, I think they were really pleased to find out that not only did we have great technology to kind of help them do that, but we had this huge ecosystem of eager developers that we can kind of send over to AT&T to deliver services. So if AT&T wants to build a cool consumer service or an enterprise service, they have that huge network that they can tap into. And from the developer's perspective, it makes a lot of sense to work directly with the carrier because the carrier, AT&T, for example, already has great relationships, enterprise relationships. I was getting a little bit of echo there. I wasn't sure if you were saying something, but does that make sense, Jay?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I know that other carriers like Verizon have. I'm getting a little echo as well. I apologize. But I know Verizon has tried to launch their own API and developer platform, but I'm not sure how well that's gone. So I can definitely see that AT&T aligning with Tropo and Voxeo makes a whole lot of sense. I'm going to go back on mute because of this echo. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, if you were hearing it, it's still on. Won't mess up the recording, but I guess if folks on the call couldn't hear, that would help out a little bit. Great. AT&T, I think, is kind of it is kind of on the leading edge of the whole developer thing. I think they've realized that they can't do it themselves, and the best thing they can do is partner with folks like us, with the kind of cloud players to really keep up their development story.
Jose, I'll tell you what, I'm going to dial back in. Hopefully we can reconnect and get rid of this echo. I don't know what's causing the echo. So. Okay. So I guess I ask everybody to dial back in, and we'll see if we can get rid of the echo.
Oh, you want us to dial back in?
Yeah, let's all dial back in, and we'll see if we can get rid of this echo because it's really difficult to hear. Thanks.
The echo might be coming from some of us who is not muted himself.
Jay, dial back in. Is the echo gone now?
No.
Still there?
Yeah, Jose's
A little
here.
bit.
We still have the echo, Jay.
Well, I guess we'll have to live with it. So, hello, who just joined?
I'm back in.
Okay. All right. So I apologize for the echo. I'm not quite sure what's causing that. I'm going to go back on mute. But Jose, I guess if you could talk a little bit more about the developer community and, what you see coming forth from that. Also, one key area of interest to this group is what, if any, services related to toll-free telephone numbers come into play around the AT&T API, and will it work with toll-free telephone numbers?
Sure. Yeah, I can. Maybe I can start with the toll-free, and then maybe go into some of the broader developer topics there. So the Tropo platform really works with any type of phone number. So both on our public cloud on tropo.com as well as with the AT&T call management API. That's what's so great about putting these APIs in the network, is that they don't require any kind of special device integration or really anything fancy like that. I mean, we plug into the core switching network at the carriers in the carrier's site, and that gives us basically access to basically enhance any telco service. So we can do it on toll-free, we can do it on VIDs, and then for kind of some next generation networks like IMS, where SIP is becoming more commonplace for handsets and devices to register into the carrier network. We can enhance those calls as well. So it's actually it's a really exciting time to be a platform provider in the telco space, especially with some of these next generation things coming out, right? I don't know how familiar your audience is with IMS as a telco technology, but it's been promised for years, but it's actually starting to take hold now across the industry. And what IMS does, in a nutshell, is it effectively basically unifies all telco communications into IP, so that in the kind of bowels of the phone network, it's just voice over IP, which makes it a lot easier to plug in advanced services, speech recognition, fancy call recording, and fancy conferencing. And as the devices and handsets become kind of get upgraded, you basically get ultra wideband, beautiful sounding audio kind of for free on top of that as well. So that's really exciting stuff, and I think, like I said, I mean, the Tropo platform that's deployed at AT&T will just reap all those benefits automatically just by virtue of how it's integrated into the core network. So that's really exciting, and AT&T did a big hackathon as part of the announcement, and not sure everyone here knows what a hackathon is, but it's basically you get a bunch of developers together, either with with like a cash prize, with the promise of a cash prize for the most innovative app, or oftentimes hackathons will be around some sort of social good project, so a disaster relief project or something like that. And it's basically just getting like-minded, usually very technical people together to kind of compete and build an end-to-end solution to solve some problem in a very short amount of time. So in this case, it was a 48-hour hackathon, and AT&T, with some help from their partners, were able to attract about 500 developers to Las Vegas to basically all compete to build the coolest mobile app that integrated Tropo and real-time communications in some fashion. And it was really, really neat to see. I mean, we saw some really neat applications. Actually, the winner you can see on AT&T's website. If you go to their, I think it's devsummit2013.com. And the winner was actually a neuroscientist who basically built a little portable EKG machine that basically, and then wired that up to a little portable computer. And what it did was it transmitted your mood. The person wearing it transmitted their mood in real time to this cloud service that he also put together. And then he used Tropo to intercept your incoming calls. So if someone tries to call you while you're like really pissed off about something, or you're like really concentrated on some work, it'll reject the call with like a nice message, and it'll say, hey, Jose's not in a good mood right now. It's probably not the best time to call him, type of thing. From a commercial perspective, maybe he's not going to be selling a lot of that, at least in the coming days. especially because his hardware was a little bulky. But it's still really cool to see that someone could build a product like that actually works and can be demonstrated in such a short amount of time, and that's what AT&T is doing by opening up their network, and we're kind of just helping them along the way. So, but to fully answer your question, Jay, I think where we see things going from a developer ecosystem perspective is right now the APIs we have at AT&T allow developers to access the phone network and use that as part of their apps, and that's really cool. But the end game for us is to allow developers to tap into the trillions of real people calls, just person-to-person calls, and then enhance them in some way. And that's what our Amici platform does. We trademarked the phrase apps in your calls, because we think that there's a new wave of really cool apps that you can do if you can really enhance communications at the core network. So just a simple example for like business users would be if you use like a CRM to log your sales calls or log your customer interactions, but with Amici, it'd be very, very simple to write an app that basically lives in the AT&T cloud or in the Verizon cloud or whoever your carrier is, that would just automatically log your calls. So that way you don't have to do a sales call and then remember to go to your web portal to write down notes about the call and who you talk to, et cetera. It can just happen automatically, right? I mean, those are the kind of obvious things that just become super simple when your actual mobile service becomes hackable, and you can just kind of add these little tidbits of functionality into it. And a lot of these features have been available on, big, clunky PBX systems for many years. We're basically just taking that, turning it into a platform, and making it available on any mobile network as well. So you don't need a new phone number or a special number. It just kind of works on your regular old mobile number. So that's the big vision, and we're inching closer every day.
So Jose, the barrier to entry is almost zero for these, enhanced services, as I understand it, right?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the beauty is that, the tough part, the toughest part for us has been, basically just convincing the carriers' network teams that this isn't going to blow up their network. But once it's in place, once the platform's in place, it is incredible how well received it is, not just by external developers, but the phone companies themselves. I mean, just last week I was at one of our customer sites talking to one of their chief marketing people, and she just came up with all these great ideas of things that services that this customer could launch to their subscribers. I mean, and now that they have a platform in place for it, it's like it literally what normally would have been like a 2-year project becomes like a 2-month project, and that's just really exciting for us. I mean, finally we'll get like better services than like caller ID and call forwarding or visual voicemail or lame stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, and one thing I would add about Voxeo is that it's AT&T is only one of the carriers that you're dealing with. You're also doing a lot of work with Telefonica and some other carriers around the world. And one of the things that I think is exciting is that the geographic boundaries for carriers is pretty much going away. They're starting to compete with one another anywhere in the world. If I'm correct, would you?
Yeah, for sure. And I think voice over IP and WebRTC, things like RCS as well. For those of you guys following that set of stuff, it turns regional carriers who are used to be kind of anchored and limited by, spectrum and physical infrastructure. It really turns them into kind of global players, because really anywhere where you have an internet connection, you can have your phone service, and you can preserve all your features and your voicemail and any other network services you have. And consumers may not mind picking up a SIM card when you're traveling, but for an enterprise user, preserving that identity globally and doing that without gouging your eyes out in roaming charges is a huge proposition there. And I think some of these emerging technologies are going to definitely lower those barriers.
Well, it also becomes like a ubiquitous experience no matter what device you happen to have in your hand or be nearby, because all of a sudden we've seen this proliferation of devices where we've got our smartphone, we've got our tablet, we've got a smart TV, we've got, not too far down the road, we've got, our bathroom mirror becomes an interface device. So
hopefully not, but it may happen.
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully there'll be a visual mute as well. So, the move into the cloud, mobility, cloud, this incredibly low barrier to entry in terms of costs and incredible exponential power surge in terms of functionality, I think is very, very exciting, and Voxeo is definitely on the leading edge of all that.
Yeah, I think we can do that. I think the industry can do that. I think the industry, the telco industry, can create tremendous amounts of value while still preserving, the subscriber relationship. And I think WebRTC and a lot of the discussions around there have created this kind of downward spiral of conversations and kind of doomsday scenarios where, people say, oh no, telco is going to be completely decentralized, and it's going to be a peer-to-peer architecture for the whole world, and there's going to be no need for phone companies. But the reality is, WebRTC just allows two endpoints to send media to each other. That's it. It's basically just the industry got together and said, hey guys, we should really have an alternative to Adobe Flash in the web browser for capturing the camera and the microphone. How about we all get together and do something about it? And then Google turned around and open sourced $100 million worth of codecs and code and things like that to kind of kickstart it. And here we are. So now we're going to have camera and microphone access in the browser. But that does not make a phone company. There's still regulations in place where calls have to be recorded. There's there are features, compliance features for large enterprises, call routing, presence. Even just voicemail. I mean, we kind of make fun of it as being kind of antiquated, but business still happens over the PSTN, and there's a reason for it. So I think we're taking more of an evolutionary approach to this than a revolutionary approach that I think a lot of people are taking. I think we can evolve the networks to being something that is just modern and integrates well with your Google Calendar, if that's what you use, or your Outlook, or your Salesforce.com, or Facebook, and just have communications that are convenient and work well with the other services you want them to work with. I think that's a good enough start. I think if the carriers just did that, consumers would be really happy for a long time.
But Jose, you bring up an excellent point that there's still involvement of the PSTN in certain scenarios. However, I guess my concern is, and particularly with toll-free telephone numbers, because for the initial call setup with a toll-free telephone number, for the most part you have to involve the PSTN because of the lookup functionality. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as soon as you involve the PSTN, all of a sudden you've got a cap on the quality and you've got a cap on the functionality. Because to my knowledge, the rich media connections that you're talking about are on the internet or IP network and excluded from the PSTN. Is that accurate, or am I missing something?
No. Maybe I didn't explain it fully, but I think as a subscriber, your home network can provide all of these enhanced services on a regular phone number or on a toll-free number. I mean, those numbering schemes. I mean, they're anchored at a service provider, and those service providers are free to provide enhanced services, however they feel like, and they do, right? I mean, not all toll-frees are created equal, and I think on the last mile of the toll-free, on the termination side, there's plenty of room to create value there. And from a technology perspective, I mean, the signaling is all the same. I mean, typically in a large carrier scenario, I mean, you go from true PSTN circuit switch telephony, but more and more, I mean, it's becoming, VoIP and SIP are encroaching into the core of the network, and that's the extension point where you can just add these new services. Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe we're not going to switch over from 10-digit dialing to SIP on the other side of the spectrum, on the consumer side, but on the inside of the core network, there's a transformation happening, and it's not driven by features or customer demand or anything like that. It's driven by pure good old, what makes sense for the business, data center consolidation. It just makes sense to voice over IP makes business sense. There's a clear ROI story there. And I think, I don't know of a carrier in the world that isn't exploring some sort of converged solution for their core network to basically converge everything into data. Because you have to support data anyways in one way or another. You're either on the fixed line side, you're probably also an ISP, and on the mobile side, you're offering data to your subscribers. Might as well make the whole thing data and save a boatload of money. And if you look at Ericsson, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the elegance of all data is, in my view, an undeniable value proposition, and simplicity, more power, less cost, all of that. So, I totally concur. I do think that one thing that's missing, and maybe you have some other information that I don't have, but it seems to me like there's still a need, and in fact I think the need is growing for some sort of ubiquitous registry for the addressing. And in some of the conversations I've heard in the WebRTC conversation leading up to the meeting in Chicago, I can't remember when it was, I think it was in September, someone on one of the calls said, well, when are we going to, as an industry, just, set up our own registry? And
yeah, I've heard that as well. But it's not enough to have the registry, though, because WebRTC does not provide any signaling. So, if WebRTC required that web browsers had SIP baked into them, then a big global registrar would be pretty close to what you need. I mean, you still have like SIP proxies and firewalls to contend with and all kinds of nasty things that require kind of some centralized infrastructure to do right. But let's ignore all that for now and say that, maybe that could be figured out in some point-to-point fashion, maybe in a similar way that, maybe Skype did. It still assumes that Facebook and AT&T and LinkedIn and IBM have all decided to use the same signaling. And WebRTC doesn't guarantee that. So unless we want to kind of go back on that and say that, all right, well, just kidding, we're actually going to, we're going to require SIP, which I would hate if they did that, by the way. Then there really isn't a universal signaling protocol for that to happen on top of. So, anyways, I'm not saying that a directory wouldn't be a good start, but it's not the whole story, right? You still need to provide some way for Bob to call Alice and for Alice to accept the call, and then for either of them to be able to hang up and for the call to be over. And you still need probably something to allow for those things to be intercepted and maybe enhanced using some enhanced services and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's tricky business. Tricky business. I mean, Skype had a big opportunity to be the next telco, but what they found was they couldn't both decentralize the architecture and also offer the services that their users wanted. I think we may be seeing a shift in that after the Microsoft acquisition, but that's really just rumors.
Right. Yeah, it's in my view, the technology and the promise of WebRTC has far exceeded or is far exceeding the addressing scheme. And, because the addressing scheme is now kind of a mishmash of all these different things. And people are starting to experiment with, hey, how do we make calls with Twitter handles, just Twitter handles? And that's referring to Chris Matthew with Twillophone.
Yeah. He actually he built that wall at Voxeo actually, which hats off to him. But
yeah. So I mean, there's some interesting things happening, but I think, and I've been involved with the Future Numbering Working Group for a number of years, and one of the big things that's happening is machine-to-machine. The possibilities of machine-to-machine connectivity and media and so forth. But I think, at least from my view, there's still a big gap in the whole addressing scheme, and all the phenomenal power that's emerging from browser-to-browser connectivity and WebRTC, et cetera, and IMS, and I'm not that familiar with what is it, RCS or RSC.
Yeah, RCS. Basically,
RCS.
RCS is basically just a way for the carrier community to play catch up with, Apple's FaceTime and iMessage, basically. So it brings all handsets at par with those features that are only available on the iPhone today, and kind of makes them universal. So, so an iPhone user and a Galaxy S3 user could have a video chat and not just, among Apple people. So.
Yeah. Well, why don't we open it up to questions? We've got about 15 minutes left. See if there's any questions among the folks that are on the call today.
I'm still here.
Well, I suppose we've... What's that?
I have a question on the database on the numbering system. If we're going to try and build this huge database that's out there for the numbers to be shared, are we going to share that database? Or currently, like if you were over in Europe, Czechoslovakia, or you were down in New Zealand, they have their own numbering system that they're using, and it's pretty much locked in there. That's my question is, how do we get access to all the different numbers? Because of the fact that if I was to use a teleconference application that was using SIP or XMPP, would it be possible to use those protocols I now have to do transversals from SIP to XMPP. Anybody there?
Yeah, this is Jay. I apologize again. I'm in a bit of a noisy environment, but I think it's a key question, because just like, the carriers are becoming untethered from geographic locations,
right.
the legacy addressing, i.e. telephone numbers, are also, headed in a direction to be completely untethered from geographic locations, certain jurisdictions, sovereignties for that matter, et cetera.
And at this point?
What's that?
Do we tie a phone number to an IP address at this point? Because we're moving from VP4 to VP6.
Yeah. So I think an IP address. This is Jose. I think an IP address will identify as an endpoint, but it's not an identity. And I think that's kind of the difference is that, I think right now the phone number is the phone number traditionally is kind of tied to a device. You have a SIM card or a home phone. So the phone number is both the address and the identity. With the advent of cell phones, the mobile number has more and more kind of become more of a personal identity. When I was growing up, our home had a phone. We had a big phone in the living room, and someone called that to reach the house. Now I have my phone number. My wife has her phone number. Everyone in my family has their own phone number, and the phone number has become more of an identity than a location. And I think what SIP and Jingle, on the XMPP side have attempted to do is kind of just formalize that notion and say that, hey, it really is an identity. I want to call Jose at some supersecretsociety.com, and I want to be able to reach him no matter what device he's logged into or whether he's on IPv4 or IPv6 or whatever. And the way SIP and XMPP do that is just using Internet protocols. So they use DNS. They use DNS primarily as the lookup, as the global database to make that work. And I think if you were building a Uber global registrar of phone numbers today, you probably want to use DNS as your database as well. Problem with DNS is there's not a good way for the whole world to share to share a single database. So it would require for each person to kind of have their own domain or kind of rent one from their ISP or something like that. So that work would definitely have to be done around that. And then you get into questions of ownership. Do I really own my number if I'm leasing if I'm Data Castro at Comcast.net, do I really own my number at that point? Because I'm really kind of sitting on top of a Comcast domain. Anyway, some interesting questions maybe we can get into that for a while. Maybe that's for a separate call. So.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. This is Bernie. Actually, what we just talked about, you have a technology for that called Enum based on DNS, which doesn't really have the problems you described. I was wondering why you want to use DNS without the Enum capabilities.
Yeah. Well, Enum definitely came to mind, and I believe Enum is also based on DNS. So there you go. You could use Enum. Yeah. Enum has its own set of limitations, and it may not be sufficient to map to multiple resources. So if you look at it on the signaling side, if you want to separate yourself from the phone number and provide a more kind of user-friendly style identity, and with the ability to kind of reach individual resources individually. So maybe I want to call Jose, or maybe I want to just specifically ring Jose's iPhone. Being able to target those devices independently is, for example, kind of a core feature XMPP and Jingle and the addressing model that they provide versus Enum, which is more number-based. But anyways, I think Enum's a fine start, and we use it inside our public cloud network to do our own call routing. So, we're big fans.
Yeah, this is Jay, and I agree with Bernie that I think Enum still has the kernel of the answer for the ubiquitous registry, if you will. The conversation though gets a little muddied because it depends on which flavor of Enum you're talking about. And I think the other part of the conversation that gets a bit muddied is it's really kind of like a basket of addresses that forms one's identity. And I no longer think that it's one particular phone number because we've generally got multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, multiple Twitter handles, etc. So the identity of an individual starts to become a collection of these addresses, and then there starts to be overlap between addresses. So it's an interesting challenge. I think there's more and more focus that's on this challenge, and certainly Bernie's been active in a research effort where we had a call 2-3 months ago in our Enum, and we're starting to see Enum surface in the conversation about the transition from the PSTN to an all-IP network, and we're seeing Enum surface in the conversation about emergency services, et cetera. So, it's something that seems simple, but I think it's deceptively. I don't want to say complex, but it's not as simple. It's not as obvious as it would seem, I guess is what I would say. Would you concur with that, Bernie?
I mostly agree what you just said.
Okay. So you agree?
Yeah, I agree too, Jay, on that. Because working with Jitsi, we have a big problem with trying to do the NAPTers in the services, just getting them straightened out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's again, the technology is extremely exciting, but the sorting out the addressing and the policy and so forth is still, there's still some big challenges there.
I think it goes down to the device. Are you on a tablet or are you on a smartphone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And who do you want to call? Do you want to call the smartphone or do you want to call the tablet? Does that person
or do you want to call them both?
Yeah.
You want your session spread between the two, and maybe 3 or 4 devices, which that becomes possible. So. So we're about 6 minutes till the top of the hour. Any other questions? Any comments? Anything anyone else would like to say?
I like the fact that we talked about the carriers today. That was nice. That was good.
Right.
We hadn't brought that up before.
Well, I think, Jose, what you've said is that and obviously what AT&T is demonstrating is that they have a new appetite for, new business models, new service sets, and new collaboration. And I think that's very, very exciting. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, they've always been kind of on the bleeding edge of the developer stuff. I mean, their developer program's like 9 years old at this point, so they've been doing it for some time. And, I think I think they're now just realizing that, hey, it's time to open up kind of our core business to the broader market as well. So, voice, video, SMS, all that stuff, and just really exciting to see. So, and thanks a lot for having me, on the line today. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, just feel free to reach out to me. It's really easy to remember. It's just Jose@VoxeoLabs.com.
Yeah. Well, Jose, I appreciate you being on the call today and sharing your experience and knowledge and insights into the AT&T API that you've crafted. And next month in February, I'm delighted to have Dr. Cullen Jennings of Cisco will be with us, and Cullen, a.k.a. Fluffy. We'll have to ask him about the origin of that nickname, but he is deeply involved in setting the standards for WebRTC at the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, as well as the W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium. And, for a long time, Cisco has been very much interested in this question of how do we create innovative, unified communications. So I'm looking forward to having Cullen on the line and speaking with him and getting an update on where things stand with WebRTC. And that will be on the last Wednesday of February at 4 p.m., which is when all the Flonewood Forum calls take place, and it'll be the same dial-in number. So unless anybody has any other questions, we will wrap it up for today. And again, Jose, I really appreciate you being on the call. And this call is recorded and will be available at phoneword.com hopefully within the next week. So,
well, great. Well, thanks again. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Jose.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.